I'm a little bit discombobulated. I'm here on my laptop without my 28-inch monitor, and it's really awkward. Okay, so tonight we're going to hear from Adam Waller, who has created an Access version control system as an Access add-in, and he has made it available through the GitHub download on your screen. I'm sure he will uh, repeat that in his presentation. Before we jump into that, I just want to kind of review some of the things that I have been aware of this month. The Access roadmap, I checked it this morning. There's only one remaining item in development. The other two that were on previously have been dropped off as being, I guess, fully implemented. So only the Monaco editor remains in deployment and testing at this point. And I believe Colin Reddington has recently released some videos on using it. So that should be interesting. The Microsoft engineering priorities, that's the same. Continuing focus on fixes. We had one just really recently that got a write-up in Access Forever. They responded really quickly to that one and were able to fix it quickly. There's an effort underway to implement large monitor support for larger forms, including zooming and can shrink and can grow. The last I heard, excuse me, the last I heard regarding integrated source control is, that says third party, but it's actually Microsoft's own integrated source control. Apologize for the slide. The last thing I saw was someone estimating we're about a year out before we should see anything concrete, but I don't know if that was just a rumor or someone who's in the know. That was the last I heard. And of course, there's never a timetable on when these things happen. The Discord server is still available. We still meet from time to time. I haven't been much on it this last week, as I mentioned to several of you individually. My younger brother had a stroke, and I've been here in California at his house, kind of taking care of him a little bit, giving him some company while his family goes to work. But I haven't really done much access stuff this week. I'll get back to it next week. And that's by way of also apologizing for not yet having produced the video from our last meeting, which I promise I will get back to that when I get back to Washington next week. Other chapters. When I looked at the calendar this morning, I only saw three other meetings, four meetings, I guess, altogether on the calendar. Colin had his meeting yesterday, and I'm ashamed to admit that I don't know what it was about because I didn't go. Access Italia is having one called Access 1,000 Ways of Use. That's on the 11th. Oh, I didn't change the date on that. This is Maria Barnes. What date is that, Crystal? When is
It's the last Tuesday of the month,
the last
the one
Tuesday?
coming up.
Yeah.
So that means it is on the 25th this month.
25th of February. And I didn't see a topic listed on hers.
Oh, hers is it's a continuation of the JSON stuff because
Okay.
in November, George Young presented some JSON stuff, but he didn't really go into a lot of depth and how we can use it. So the January presentation went into using a library that's free. You can download it from GitHub. There's a couple snags with it, though. For instance, being able to handle nulls and some stuff like that. So the February presentation is going to go more in depth on what we can do to correct some of the issues with that free tool that everybody can get.
Okay, perfect.
George,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. Did you want me to fill in the information about Colin's presentation yesterday?
Yeah, if you just quickly tell us what it was about. I apologize. I completely spaced it out. I was
Not a problem at all. It was by John Mallinson, who's a Brit, and it's called VBE Extras for a better VBE experience. It's an add-in written in C# that allows it that expands the capabilities of the VB a editor.
Oh, great. Yeah. So we'll look forward to the video for that one.
Any comments on how it compares to MZ tools that a lot of us still use?
There were comments, there was some overlap. There were certain things that it doesn't, that VB tool, that MZ tools doesn't have, MZ tools, sorry. But I'm not a good person to go into more detail on that, because I don't tend to use such things myself. So
Thank you, Adam. And congrats to Crystal, who is now an MVP. Microsoft MVP. How does that happen, Crystal?
Oh, well,
Well,
how did
Dual
it not happen,
MVP.
Russ?
you stole my thunder there, Albert. Yeah. And
Oh,
she was
thank you,
reappointed
Albert.
with a dueling MVP status.
Dueling.
Happy to get it again. And now I'm a wordy MVP too.
Ah, those guys. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great. So now the last one that I found on the schedule is for the March meeting of Access Europe, and it is about AI, which everyone now is supposed to be on the bandwagon for AI. So we'll see how that goes. I'm looking forward to that one too. The only two conferences which are scheduled that I haven't been able to find are Access Day in Redmond. That's scheduled right around the MVP Summit. And that's Armin Stein's conference. And Carl Donnerbauer's Access DevCon in Vienna in April. And that one, I believe, is virtual. So if you're interested in getting together and talking to people in person, you can either join one of those two, sign up and attend one of those two conferences. Okay, back to Access version control. I was really excited. I saw a presentation that Mike Wolf did about Adam's version control at Armin's Access Day last year. And I tried to get a hold of Adam to schedule a presentation as a follow-up after I'd seen it. And one thing happened and then another. And then finally we were able to get together and find a time when he could do a presentation. So I'm really looking forward to it. And in the meantime, Microsoft announced that they are intending to bring back their own version control. And we've just had a series of presentations on Access add-ins. So it all comes together, I think, in this presentation. We had a discussion about a week or so ago. We went over all of the possible things that he could present, and I think we picked out the top 4 or 5, maybe 6, that we thought would be the most interesting to highlight, but there's several others, probably a dozen others, that if we have time, you can maybe get him to talk a little bit more about. But let's get through these first top 5, top 4 highlights, and we'll see where we go from there. So with that, Adam, if you'd like to introduce yourself, I will stop sharing. You can start sharing from.
All right, sounds good.
And thank you
Make
again for
sure.
joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and appreciate all of you. I feel like I'm a little bit of the new kid on the block, and kind of the have a lot to learn from many experienced developers here on the call. But that's what I appreciate about the developer community, is being able to learn from others and as we go along. Just go through a little agenda of what I was thinking of covering. And again, this is flexible. I'm here to be able to share and go into depth on the things that would be most helpful for you all. So you let me know how I can how I can best do that. I was going to give you a brief intro about me, a little bit about the project, kind of when it started, how it went. We'll jump into a demo of the add-in, just some quick overview of how it works, some of the basic paces it does. Then really the meat and potatoes part of the presentation here is to jump into some of the interesting technical highlights. And again, there's a lot of different things that we could cover on this, but I thought some of these might be kind of interesting as fellow Access developers to kind of see, there's many ways, approaches you can take on things. So 4 that we looked at is talking about sanitizing the source files to strip out, GUIDs, things that are changing and between builds and so forth. Talking about the ribbon interface using TwinBASIC to give us a nice interface to be able to use the add-in. I wanted to talk about a new feature just recently released here about being able to merge into an existing database without doing a full build from source, so that you might find that interesting as well. And then we'll talk some about performance tuning and some of the things that we did to just really fine-tune some of the performance on it. So some other topics that we could dive into, SQL Server database objects is a new thing that we've added into the thing. There'll be, I know George was interested in seeing some of that. We'll see if we might jump into that. Some automation hooks and how you can kind of extend off of the workflow from the add-in itself. Talk a little bit about SQL formatting and how we can just get a more consistent output there. A little bit of how we set up the installer. This is kind of interesting about, when you've got a history and you've got everything combined in a single file, being able to split it between the object and the VBA source for forms and reports and such, but still preserve the history from Git is kind of a fun little thing too. Then UI automation to be able to get like the selected object when you're looking at your object browser. That was kind of fun. So let me run through just a really quick intro on who I am. I started right out of high school. I was introduced to Microsoft Access by a network administrator that kind of took me under his wing, and he introduced me to Access 95, and he was Access developer, did it for a plastics manufacturing company, and he kind of got me started. I really enjoyed the 97 Access Developers Handbook. Some really helpful things. In 2000, I went on to another job when our family moved and did some more VBA automation, actually on this side going into AutoCAD and some integrations between Word and Excel and such. With that, built a timesheet program for the office, and they were pretty excited about some of that. But for me, really, the thing that I love about Microsoft Access, the thing I love about VBA programming and automation is the way that it makes people's jobs easier. Some people love the technology because it's nerdy and there's a fun element of that. But for me, when I see somebody's tedious, repetitive job, reducing the number of steps to something very simple and manageable that lets them focus on the things that are really important. And that's what gives me a great joy in the project. And even this add-in itself is one that really does that. I feel like it just empowers Access developers to really work together well as teams, work in distributed environments where you've got people in other parts of the office or even other parts of the country or the world working on the same project and being able to share that work together. I've worked for the past 16 years or so at a nonprofit Christian ministry and just had a lot of fun times, good experiences, and things with that. You might enjoy seeing a picture of my family, my wife Valerie, and we have 5 children. So ranging from 11 down to 3. So lots of fun together. All right, on to the project. I think this really started, from the best I can tell, looking on GitHub and such, with Brendan Kidwell as he in 2012 started putting together some VBA scripts to help automate some of the save as text functions built into Microsoft Access to try to get some text-based source code that you could use to put in a source code repository like SVN or Git or that kind of thing. In 2015, about almost 10 years ago, I forked that repository and began building off of it. Actually did some major revamps, reworks on it, converted it to an Access add-in. I spent a lot of hours on the sanitize functions, really optimized the performance on how that run, just really eliminated a lot of bottlenecks that were taking place there. Restructured everything to use a class-based system dealing with different Access object components. I may touch on that when we actually look at some code. But anyway, I felt like it helped to structure the project in a way that's easy to understand, easy to jump into and make tweaks and extensions. In 2020, we had a version 2 that was released that had a UI instead of just having debug statements printing out to the immediate window. We've got an actual UI to use it. We've got an installer to make that easier, and And then version 3 the same year to be able to build projects entirely from source files. You can actually you can delete your front end binary and you can build the whole thing just straight from the source files. 2024, last year, after a lot of work, probably a couple years in the making, completed a major revamp of the system. Again, some major performance improvements and just integrations, really laying the groundwork for some things with the merge, and then also the ribbon toolbar. Looking towards, getting it so that we can translate the user interface so that you could be able to use the add-in in other languages in the future. And so that kind of brings us up to where we're at today. But rather than just talking about it, let me look at some some examples here. I do want to point out the GitHub repository is going to be probably one of your best places to find details and documentation and such on the version control add-in. It's on github.com, joyful service, MS Access VCS add-in is where it's located. And you can see a little GIF of it, some of the basic operations of it, intro on it. But the thing I really want to point out here is there's a wiki that you can click on over here, and that has some really helpful things, including a quick start. If you want to just jump into it, here's just a quick way of, here's how to download it, here's how to install it, just run some of the basic things of exporting and working with that system. Then we've got some other pages. I'll talk about some of the supported objects and stuff like that later. But without further ado, let's just take a look at some of what it looks like as far as actually using it. So to do this, I've got just a copy of the Northwind database. I'm using Access 2010 for the development work that I'm doing both at work and and personally. So that's what you'll see me using today. But your classic Northwind database. This is the one from Access 2010. I know there's Northwind 2.0, but that's got some newer features that don't run in 2010, so I didn't quite have time to chop down a version that would work. But so you got your basic database, front end forms, queries, that kind of stuff. So here's what you can do with this add-in. So this version control is just a tab up on the top there on the ribbon. Click on version control. And then I'll jump back for a second. You can see just have the database in there right now. So I'm going to just use the options pretty much just right out of the box. I'm going to click export source files. What this is going to do is it's going to take all the components, the entities, the queries, the forms, the reports, the macros, all these different settings and options, and it's going to export all of those into text-based files that it just dropped there into a folder. So by default, it's going to create a folder with this name of the database, .src for source files, and there inside here you can see all of what's behind that database. So if I want to take a look at something, so for example, I can take a look at, here's an error handling class. I could jump into Notepad++. I could see that. Switch this over to Visual Basic, so I can see, there's my my class right there. So all of this is text-based files. So when you have this running inside of a Git repository, then you can just commit that this folder right to your repository, and that has all your source files necessary for that database. Now, something that's really powerful about this is, let's say I want to export files again. Now, I've already exported. I've done a full export. That took about 8 seconds on this database, which is it's not a trivial one. It's got a fair bit of items in it. If I export source files now, it's going to scan for changes. You can see it finished that in 1 second. So that's a part of the optimization that's been worked through in this, is to make it super, super fast to scan for any changes that might be happening. If I just jump into, let's say, a let's just jump into something here, and then maybe let me show my toolbar here, and let's just add. So let's just add a little comment there so I can save that, close it. And now if I export source files, boom, exported, you notice it just did that module. So that one thing that I saved. Now, I could go through and I could decide, you know what, I want to actually build this from source. I want to take this project I've got open right now and I want to build a copy of it just from my source files. I can click this button and says, do you want to build it from source? I'll say yes. And had an issue because I think I had it.
Were you not trying to recreate a file that you were already in, Adam?
Yes, it actually was, but I think it was in exclusive mode because of the changes that I had made to it. So let me.
We have a tradition of highlighting bugs in demos.
Yes, well, I wouldn't be able to do a presentation without following that tradition, right? Okay, give me 1 second. I'm gonna just close access here.
Don't feel bad because I had 2 failures last month, so it's not a big deal.
Okay, so I did go ahead and just close it, reopen it, and then it worked as intended here. So I clicked build from source, and it just built the entire project from source. Now there's going to be a problem though. If I open my tables, there's nothing in my tables. So normally, if you're just building a front end, you would be linking to back end tables and so forth. So that wouldn't be an issue. You would just, it'd be linked right to your back end tables. Well, in this case, I actually had them as part of the database. So I did that just because I want to illustrate another thing that the add-in has. Every time you do a build from source, it's going to automatically create a backup of your original file. So if something goes wrong, it's like, whoops, that didn't work. I missed something. No problem. You can just delete that, go back and rename this this backup file. And then I can open this guy back up. Okay, and now it's got all my tables and all my data. Now, something I want to point out you can do with this option, I went to the version control tab and I can click to view options. And then here I've got the options with table data. Right now, it's not exporting anything from these tables, but I can come in here and I can say XML format. I want to go ahead and export all of my tables in XML format, just because I want to have this, self-contained, project that's got my, my data and my, my front end right there. Now, again, in a production environment, you typically aren't going to do that. And this is not a backup of your data. It's not really intended for that, but it's saying if there's something that's a part of your project, maybe it's a file or a table with settings or, configuration options or something that's relevant to your front end specifically, then sure, you can go ahead and export the table data for that. So I'll hit export, and because I've went back and renamed the database, reopened it again, it's kind of a new file, so it did a full export for me. So now if I jump over and I've got a shortcut here, I can just click source folder. It'll jump right to that source folder. So if I go to my tables folder now, I can see that's the actual data for my tables, not to be confused with table defs, which is the definitions for the tables. So those are in 2 separate places. Okay, so now let's take that same database. Now that I went ahead and I've exported the tables as data as well, let's build from source. Okay, so I have done that. So if I switch over to Northwind Traders, I can see I've got all my everything is saved right there. I can jump into AutoExec and I am back into my database. Now that that might look a little bit unimpressive because we were just there, but here's how powerful that was. I can take and I can delete that file. So now I don't have that file at all. So I can go and I can open Microsoft Access. I can go to version control and I'm going to build from source. Now notice I don't have a database open right now. So by default, it's not going to build the current database because there's nothing opened. So if I build from source, then it's going to prompt me to select a folder. So here, if I just downloaded this repository, and I went to the source folder for that, I can go right to that source folder, select that source files folder. Okay. All right, so it's done a build. This time it did not have the binary at all. It just built that entirely from the source files. So again, there I can click to run the auto exec and I'm right in there. I can see my sales reports, all my data is right there. So that just kind of highlights the just some of the basic usage of what it does. When you can build from source, go ahead and export source files. You've got that. So back and forth between source files and your database, you've got everything right there at your fingertips.
Okay, we have a question about the table
Sure.
before we move on.
Yeah.
You selected each of those tables individually to export the data. Can you select the local tables or linked tables or both, or by group, by their, whether they're linked or not?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So let me
A way to just bulk, I guess, like a grouping.
So if I jump back into this this project here, yeah, it right now it doesn't have a lot built into grouping of different tables. By default, it's going to, well, it's always going to export the definition or the table defs of all of your tables. So it's only the data side is what you're selecting in here. And so on those, you'll just see a list of all your tables. You can have your hidden tables, your system tables, or if you've got ribbons or reg for other things that way. So you'll be able to see everything that's in the current database.
Okay,
That makes sense.
So
yeah. So
how about table defs for linked tables? Are those?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, those are. So let me actually jump into that. So if I jump back up to here, one of the things that a lot of times, you'll be doing is you'll be working with a database that's got a back end that might be have a split database with a back end or something of that nature. This database here, and I just did this, this afternoon, just a quick and dirty kind of a project, but I went ahead and linked this to a local instance of Microsoft SQL Server. So I'm just running this under a local DB instance of SQL Server. And so if I go to my version control here, and I go to the options, and I go to table data here, so I can do the same thing here. So I can, and you'll notice they'll have a different icon. You see these have a little world icon like that. So I could come through and say I want to go ahead and pull the data from my link tables. Now, again, for the purpose of source control, most of the time you're not wanting to put your actual data in your source control. It's more your structure and definitions of things. But there can be types of data that you do want in there. So maybe you've got a table with your ribbon configuration or something like that. That would be a great candidate for doing that. So I've just saved that. And so now let's go ahead and export.
Oh, right. You're doing this. We saw the globe icon, but you didn't know what other possibilities there were there. It would be interesting to see, because in the Access, you've got your ordinary table, you've got your linked Access table, you've got your linked ODBC tables.
Yep.
It'd be helpful to know I think the point that Kent raised was about, let's do it for this type. So if you
Yep.
had other types, if you had an understanding of what other things are optional there,
hmm
so
I guess that would give you the option here. I've never
would a,
done that, but
would a linked
yes.
access table have that globe or not?
No, they would have a different icon.
They would have a different icon. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Can you click show system tables and just illustrate that? Yeah.
Yeah, this database doesn't. Oh, yes, here it is. Yep. So
So
the system ones
yeah,
like that.
they were
So
different.
let's go ahead and just link an access table here. So
Yeah, because I can't think of a use case where you'd actually want to export all the data from a back-end table, but
mhm.
I'd certainly want the data that's in front-end tables only, because they're like configurations and that sort of stuff.
What if you're converting from one backend to another backend and you're using this to do it?
Oh, I wouldn't.
You might not, but the point is it's a tool that allows you to.
Yeah, but the back end's a different thing to the front end.
I'm fully aware of that, Ken.
I mean, I'm sorry, it's a different use case. Like if you're migrating a back end, you'd use another method of migrating the data. This is about source code for the front end objects.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you've got options there. Again, people use it different ways. Some people, use different tools for the back end data. Some people, want to use just everything together in the tool. So the main, I guess the main idea there is it gives you the flexibility that you can use it, the way that's going to work best with your particular setup there. So it looks like linked. Yeah, employees one. So that'd be the access one that we link. So it looks like it is a globe icon. So it's the internal tables, I think, have a more like a table kind of a icon. So if we just threw together a simple table. And then jump over to here, table data. Okay, so there's our table. So you can see the icon is different for that one. Good question.
Well, I guess the one probably what I do in all of those cases, those front end tables, I have them hidden anyway, and you're allowed to flip on that.
Yep. And that hidden attribute, that's something that's also the preserved as well. In fact, so I'll just use that as a springboard to touch on the supported objects. And you may have seen this in the wiki here, but it just goes over a list of what all is, supported access tables, including extended properties. You got table, SQL, linked tables, the linked primary keys, ODBCs, and so forth. Pass-through queries, saved print settings, and then projects, hidden attributes, remove personal info, the application icon, saved import export specs of both types, table-based as well as the other type, the relationships, navigation, pane groups, even the embedded office themes. Command bars is actually supported. It's not rolled out to the production branch yet, but I think that's very close there. And then various properties, and then you can also use it with ADP projects if you're still supporting one of those. So that's kind of just a quick. I guess that was some of the things that we touched on just on a quick demo of as far as the overall way that the add-in works. I know I ran through that very fast, but are there any questions there before we jump into some of the more technical side?
Oh, I had a question, but I'll wait now because you're going into some of those areas that I want.
Okay.
I'll make you one really short comment though.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody in the news groups or anywhere who knows me knows that I've been, like searching for the magical crown in the Raiders of the Lost Ark for trying to get source code control to work with Access for about 10 years.
Mm.
And I've tried everything on the planet. And last week I spent 4 days straight with my other developer. And on Saturday at about 1 p.m., we finally got a build to work. And do you know what tool we used? Yours.
Really? Wow.
I have great gratitude to what you've just done here.
Oh,
This is absolutely a remarkable piece of work, and you should be very proud. I'm stunned, and it's really
oh,
amazing. Let's see, we have 426 linked tables, 534 queries, 485 forms, 354 reports, 175,000 lines of code, 55 modules, 30 some class ones. And after about 4 days, we managed to clean up crap and get it, and we got a build working as of
wow.
Saturday. And that's what, today's Thursday? So that's Saturday. And we got a new developer coming on Monday. And so we got it going just 3 days. Now we have 3 people. And we need
That's
your tool.
awesome.
And we need
That's
your
awesome.
tool. Second question. Second
I,
question.
I
Are you
concur with Albert.
are you interested in me building another 3, 4 icons as another separate add-in that will do the push pulls and manage your login and all that crap to GitHub so that a new user to this can just do push pull and do it all from inside of Access?
Wow, that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to see
Okay.
see what you. I know you.
I'll contact. The other thing is, and I'll wait to the end.
Mhm,
I need a slight change to this thing.
mhm.
Okay, and it's
Sure.
but I'll wait till the end. But to make a long story short,
Yep.
we have a very complex build, and you see it's a monster application. Okay.
Sure. Yep.
When you're doing the restore process, you restore all the assets like all the settings, the connections, and you got all this crap and assets before you start restoring what I call the base assets.
Yep.
I want you to move modules to the top before queries and everything else. And the reason
Mm,
is very simple. When it's doing the restore process, we have some queries that, for better or for worse, have VBA functions in them.
mhm,
And so if you restore the queries and forms before those VBA functions, you're very well aware of that when you create a form, there's the dot operators in the class that are getting auto-generated by Access.
mhm.
Okay. They don't get created properly if the module doesn't exist.
Yep.
Okay. So bump the module up.
Yep. Yep.
I hacked your code to make it work,
Yep.
and it does work. And
Sure.
I couldn't see quite where you set up each of the list, that collection you have of all the objects. I couldn't
Mhm.
find out where that is, but I didn't care, so I just hacked a line of code and I moved modules up.
Sure. Sure.
Okay. Do you understand why I'm asking that? I would not ask it for
Yes.
fun and giggles, but it's
Yeah.
critical for the restoration process. And to anybody else, if you don't, you go recall that when you're building an Access form, whether it's a link table or not, you go into somebody's old project and you see a bunch of piled up invisible controls in the corner. And it's because at one time they they at one time um, they had some dot operators in your VBA code. You know, you go me dot some column name. Well, those column names are generated by the Access IDE automatically for you when you actually go in and out of the data source of the form. You go
Mhm.
design mode data source. So now what we do a lot of times to fix it is you highlight the data source, Control X, tab out, Shift tab, go back and paste it in, tab out again and save. And that'll auto regenerate all your dot properties. But the dot properties are failing because of this module hierarchy order. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm. Sure.
Anyway,
And
Sounds
yeah,
like
it
a
just
collaboration is in your future.
yes, well, that's fantastic, and that's one of the awesome things about this add-in is it's all the add-in is built from this add-in, so it's on GitHub, and all the source code is right there. So you can literally just create a pull request with things, and this function right here, get containers. This is what defines the order that things
okay.
get built from, and
Okay.
so basically all we need to do then is take this right down here and then move it up to make sure that it's coming in before those queries. So
What was the file called? It was
VCS utilities, or
Mod VC.
sorry,
Okay.
mod VCS
Okay.
utility.
Okay. I'll
Yep.
just make a note of it for now. Thank
hmm
you.
Perfect.
Sure.
We'll look forward to that in the near future.
Yeah. And that,
I will only
yeah.
make one more thing. The reason why I brought up the issue of bringing into the issue of having about 3 or 4 icons on somewhere, let's just say another tab on the ribbon. The
Sure.
reason why I wanted to do that is I don't know if people's stories about writing hand coding your SQL. Okay, okay. Well, I can do it in my sleep and that, but I still use the query designer. Okay,
Sure.
I don't
Yeah.
do it by hand. And
Yep.
for new developers and new people, and even the group here, if you're not used to GitHub, it can be real nasty to learn. Okay, but I
Yeah.
use Visual Studio every single day right now, and
hmm
I use GitHub on Visual Studio every
hmm
single day,
hmm
and I don't know Git. But
Sure.
it's got the push, it's got the
Yep.
pull, it's got show me
Sure.
the
Sure.
changes
Mhm.
and all that
Yep.
stuff. And so with a couple little simple UI additions, I can take somebody who's new to Access and you're working with another developer, you open up a form in design mode, you take a button and you move it, you save it, you export, and that guy's, halfway across the country, just tell him to pull and he'll see that button moved over in your version of your copy of Access. It's fantastic to the community, but the community doesn't know Git.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got to give them a couple of icons
hmm
to do this. If we do this,
hmm
we will start like this will get used in a massive way. Okay. Right
Yeah.
now it's incredible. Okay. I will say
hmm
that to you, Adam. Thank you.
hmm
But we need that extra stuff. But thank you.
Sure.
I'm good.
Yeah. No,
We
that's
can, we can,
fantastic.
we can, we
Uh,
can revisit setting up that after Adam has a chance to finish the rest of his presentation.
Sure. I'll just a brief springboard off of that. One thing that I use personally on the Git side of things is I use GitHub Desktop, which works for Git repositories with GitHub as well as ones like GitLab like a local instance of GitLab. You can run a GitLab as well. So I use this for all of my Access development, and so
Yeah.
so that's one way that's very easy and user friendly for new developers, because literally you'll just see those changes show up right in here and just type in your commit message, commit to dev, and the push. So it's got some of those buttons built in. But like you said, I think for many, having those options just right in the add-in could be really valuable.
Yeah,
So yeah.
we're using GitHub Desktop for the new people or people who don't do that, and I'm currently using it for this add-in.
hmm
So
Sure. Good.
Great. Outstanding. Thank you.
Sure. Excellent. So yeah, let's jump in. Let me talk a little bit about sanitizing the source files. And this, to me, this was one of the make or break issues with version control. Because if you've ever worked with the exported files from Microsoft Access, particularly when you get into forms and reports, one of the things that you'll find very quickly is that there are certain things that change every time that you rebuild your database or work with those. So if we take a form just as an example here, and I take and compare these on WinMerge, you're going to see the difference between this one on the left is just a raw export just from the native built-in save as text command. And then on the right is what we call the sanitized version, the one that's had some things trimmed out. So like over here, we've got a checksum. This checksum is going to change every build. So you don't want to see that showing up on every single object every time you build something. It just creates an incredible amount of noise that is very difficult to sort through and sift through. Out of these 5,000 changes, what was the actual 2 lines of code that I actually changed? So so some of these things, some of the border colors, grid lines, and again, there's options on the level of sanitizing that you can have on some things. This column info that would change, this base info, some things we tested that we're able to successfully rebuild it completely without having some of the extra and redundant information in there. As far as doing that in an effective, efficient kind of a way, this was an area that I spent a lot of time refining and going over. And I believe it's in this class here. Yes. So this has like the main sanitize functions. And just being people that enjoy some of the technical details on this. This is kind of what. And I recently built this out as an actual class because we use it for other types of things like our VBA code and so forth. But for things like forms and reports, it's just loading everything into text, splitting it by lines, and then it's kind of using case statements to go through and some functions about if it starts with this or it has this, then just kind of the logic. And I wanted it to be as simple and readable to understand as possible, but you've got a lot of complexity in terms of you're dealing with some things have multiple lines involved and other stuff. So that was just kind of a fun project over the years to kind of refine that and build it out to where it was efficient and fast, and also doing a decent job at it, but being maintainable. You can see it's not a 5,000 lines of code for that. Some cool things too with the on this, we were able to actually do some color properties was another fun topic. I won't get into all of that, but on the VBA side, this was something really helpful. Sometimes you'll have like tabs and spaces and things at the beginning of your code that spaces got converted to tabs, or if you just like add a new line to something, now you've got this these spaces that are in there. So part of what the VBA sanitizing does is trim all that out, so you're always getting a consistent output on your VBA output there. And then the XML side, and I do want to just take a moment to say that this project I've been very heavily involved in it in the last, I guess, 9 years, almost 10 years here, but it has been the product of many people that have jumped in with pull requests and many that have contributed in some meaningful ways. In fact, Albert, I think you actually answered a post that I had on the Stack Overflow that kind of gave me a key that I needed for this project at one point along the way. So you're a part of this journey too, and many others that have helped with things like the UTF-8 encoding and diversion, dealing with some of the encryptions where you're building hashes of things to compare them in an efficient way. Some of the Git concepts. There's actually some Git integration related stuff that you might be interested in, Albert, as well. It's got some commands here that it runs to actually look at things like your latest head and stuff like that. But anyway, so that's a little bit of what happens on the sanitize side of things. I know I ran through that pretty fast, but any questions or things on that front?
I just it flashed before my eyes too quickly. How are you getting WinDiff to show you the differences? How are you firing that off?
Okay, sure. So that's just I select those two files and then I right click, and then it's just a context menu
Oh, okay. All
for
right.
WinMerge. Now, one thing that's neat in the add-in itself, if I jump back over to Access, you have an option here where you've got a diff tool. And so WinMerge and VS Code are two that are built in. You can easily add your own as well. But if you have a case where there's a conflict between a source, let's say you're importing something, but it's already changed in the database, it'll give you a little conflict resolution dialog. And then you've got just a click of a button that will launch WinMerge and show you, the differences between those, or VS Code if you prefer. So that's another really powerful way to review those diffs.
All right. So if you want to compare this file to one in a previous release, a previous one,
Mm-hmm.
you have to select this here, add it to your WinDiff, and then go to the other folder and find it.
Yeah. So if I come in here just on this one file and right click and go to diff, it's going to ask me where the second file is. So I can browse and I could find it anywhere.
Right. So it's just the regular way of getting at it. There's no
yes.
shortcut. Right.
Right, right. And here, if you want to like say you can flip over to say the main branch, and let me just take a look at what that looks like. So then once you switch to the main branch, it updates all your source to look at, so you could grab the file there and refresh that and diff between the two of those.
Well,
So it's a way you can kind of
so you can do a diff between the two folders and then just inspect the ones that are different.
yeah, exactly.
All
Here's
right.
another.
But your cleaning program means that
Mhm,
when you compare this one to the previous one, the
mhm.
the same irrelevant stuff's been stripped out of both.
Correct.
So if
Exactly.
there's no significant change, they should be the same.
Yes. Yeah. Now, once
That's
in a while,
great.
you are going to find some, edge cases as, if you've been working Access for a while, like if you edit your query in the designer and then later, you export it, then you go and edit it in the SQL builder, that like the SQL editor itself, and then save the query. It's going to export when it does a save as text. It's a totally different kind of a file format that it generates. So, you'll see a difference like that if you see that change. But by and large, I would say 95% of those, noise type of, diffs have been, eliminated through this. And then the handful of things that you may occasionally see, for me, they haven't been a major issue, but that's something that we're always, tweaking and refining. Something I did on the XML side, right over here on the right side, you can see the raw, just a export here. Over here on the left side, you can see it's actually indented. And there was an XSD transformation, XML transformation that there was another developer that jumped in and suggested that. And it was just a fantastic idea and really cleaned up that and gave it a much nicer, formatted thing. So again, when you're looking at two formatted things, it's so much easier to compare the changes between those. Let me jump into the ribbon interface and this is where to me this was also a pretty big game changer personally, just in the usability of the add-in. Normally you would come over here to add-ins, and you can still get to the add-in, using this. If you've got an ADP project, that's I don't know of a way to get the due to some technical things I won't get into here, but I haven't gotten the ribbon to work with an ADP project, but not that many people use them, so I'm not too concerned about it. But the traditional way to get to an add-in is come over here to the add-ins and then, grab your add-in from there. But the nice thing about TwinBASIC is it allows us to create an add-in that is a COM add-in. So if I jump over to options, go to Trust Center, let's see, add-ins, in the wrong place here, add-ins, COM add-ins, manage COM add-ins. And here I can see ribbon integration for Microsoft VCS add-in. So here I've got, and it's an actual DLL that's been compiled using TwinBASIC. But the wonderful thing about that is, and I'm just going to open a new window so we can jump right over to it. But the full source code for that ribbon and the TwinBASIC project, those are right in the GitHub repository. So anybody who's able to jump into those and take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and just load it up inside of the TwinBASIC IDE. Must have some different key bindings on the. Okay, so this is what it looks like inside of the TwinBASIC IDE. So just from the top to the bottom, it's we're looking at less than 300 lines of code. This is really just a wrapper that is able to load the ribbon interface from the XML file. So even the ribbon and the things that are loaded from that ribbon. Let me jump to this other window here. So if I look at the ribbon, I can see this ribbon XML. That is, that's right, again, right in the GitHub repository, but that is the source code to be able to see that ribbon. And I've adjusted this. I used a ribbon builder tool to originally make it, but later I went on and actually set it up to where it's all indented and such, so I can have my own callbacks, and it works easier in the version control. But that's all the XML. So that ribbon add-in, rather than hard coding everything into the ribbon, so you had to rebuild that project, it's actually it just grabs that ribbon XML file and it loads it into the application. And then when you click on a button in that, then then it has some very simple callbacks that it's going to do. An on action command button is going to make sure that the add-ins are loaded and everything. And then it's going to just go application object run. And then this is kind of the ticket right here. It's going to call MS Access VCS handle ribbon command, and it's going to pass in the ID for the for that object. So let me jump back into this right here. So just for example, this button show. So that's the thing that's going to show our add-in. So right here, if I click on this, it's going to open the add-in. So when you click that button, that's going to pass the this button show. It's going to pass that ID to my Microsoft Access add-in to this handle ribbon command function and pass that command. So if I jump over here to the Access side and I jump over to my this class here, this version control, this basically has the, does this have the handle ribbon command? Okay, actually that's part of the okay, so here's the function it's calling right here. So it's going to grab that. It's going to do some fancy stuff to make sure everything's working. Then it's going to call, it's going to trim off that three-letter prefix on it, and then it's literally going to do a call by name for the name of that add-in on the VCS class. So the VCS class is this class version control. So you remember it was called button show. So you trim off those first three characters and then it's show. So it's literally going to pass through and call this function called show. And then that's going to, launch or do command open that form right there. So it's basically just a pass-through kind of entity that's a lightweight wrapper that's able to pass those commands right into the Access, because I wanted as much as possible all the logic, even the handling of those commands, to be processed through the add-in. That's all written in VBA and just part of the package there. So it's very easy to update and manage. So anyway, again, just super grateful for the incredible work that was done on this project with TwinBASIC, and it was a fantastic job there by Wayne Phillips, and just really grateful for his efforts there that really made this practical. I started going down the road of trying to make a Visto add-in for Access and kept hitting walls with that. And then you got the whole issue with 64-bit versus 32-bit, and then having to compile it for different versions of Access, and it was just a challenge. The great thing about this, it works on that same DLL file is going to work on Access 2010 as well as 365. Just such great compatibility that opens up there. So that's a little bit about the ribbon interface, and again, that's
one quick question.
Yeah,
in the chat. And I think that question was just answered. Are there restrictions on Access version where this can be used? And I think you just answered that, right?
Yeah, great question. So Access version 2010 is the lowest, and then all the way up to the current versions of Access. And it works with a ribbon, 64-bit, 32-bit, all the versions. It should, as far as I know. I mean, if it doesn't, then let's open a pull request and fix it. But yes, it does. So then let's jump into this live merge capability, and I'm going to confess something here that I'm going to run this this unscripted because I didn't in my prep here I didn't quite get the chance to work through this ahead of time. So we're going to just run it live. We can do this off Northwind, or we can just create a new database. I think I'll just do it off Northwind database right here. So we've got our database in. I'm going to go ahead and just build from source, make sure I'm looking at the same thing as my source files are. Excellent. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead. I've built from source, but I'm going to go ahead and export source files just to make sure that because when I build from source, the first time you export is going to do a full export because, it wants to make sure everything is going to be consistent the way that it's saved. So it's done the full export. So if I was to export again, it's going to scan for changes, and then all it's going to dump is the table data. Okay, so now I've got a database that I've got that I'm working on. And so I'm going to go in here into my source code, and let's jump over here to my modules, and let's just jump into this one. And just for fun, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just make a little change.
So if you make a change to one object, you can export to the same source, and the date and time on the file will show you which, if anything's actually changed.
Yes, that's a great question. Okay, so let me do this. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this merge build. So I've got a source file that I've just edited right here. I've got a change to it. I've saved that change. And now, rather than rebuilding the entire database from scratch, and Albert, you'll appreciate this, with that gigantic database that you're working with, I can click here to merge build. It's going to scan from source files, and you can see it just merged one module. It found the one thing that was different, and it merged into my database. You notice I didn't have to restart the database. If I go over to my utilities module here, and I jump down here, there's my function I just created.
That's sweet. So Adam, we're right at an hour, maybe a little over an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you reach a point where you can wrap it up.
Okay.
And I don't want to cut you off because I know you've got at least one more topic to present.
Sure. Sure.
Use your discretion.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. So I just made a change there in my module right here. Now I'm going to do something, even more fun here. I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to edit both files. So now I've got a file that I've edited in my source, and I've got the file that I've edited in my database. So now if I go to export source files, it should have, okay. It's I was going to try to demonstrate the conflict resolution side of things, so that if you edit let's just try this. Let me just try it the other direction here. Okay, so that one's been changed more recently, but let me see if it'll give us that conflict. There we go. That's what I was looking for. So this is, telling me that, hey, there's a conflict here. I'm going to click show diff. I can scroll all the way down and I can see, here's the two changes. So again, just a powerful way of being able to identify before I overwrite something that, hey, this is something that was changed in both places. Let me see if I can fix that. So I canceled it, didn't overwrite my database. Now I can resolve it, fix it the way that I'd prefer there. One thing I do want to just touch base on really quick. We won't go into the details on it, but I think it was something that some people were wondering about. There was an important file in the source files. You've got this VCS index.json. That is the file that is used to really manage, the hash of the file properties, the dates and the times, the content, and that kind of thing. That's how it's able to do that super fast scan for changes, because it's comparing what's in this index file to know what has changed between the two. So let me jump back here. Performance tuning. Let me just run through this really fast. This we don't have to take a lot of time on, but one of the things that I spent some time doing. Notice I can click this, so I can have the option, if I can do it on demand, just a full export. So I'm going to click to do an export of this database, and so I've just done an export. I can open this log file. And I'll just pull this over where we can see it. It gives me some details about how things were exported. But down at the end, you're going to see this is the fun stuff down here. It gives me this output of performance reports, and it's gone through and it outlines both by category. Forms took 2.18 seconds. Queries were next at 1.12. Total number of seconds. I can see where stuff was happening. And here I can see the operations and what, this was run 127 times, took a total of 1.6 seconds. So I can scroll through here. It's just a great way to be able to troubleshoot. And Albert, you'll really enjoy, after you do an export of that gigantic database, take a look at the performance reports, and you'll be able to see just a breakdown of which things were faster and where the, potential bottlenecks were. So that's something that I used for doing a lot of the performance tuning with that. And on the source code level, that's all in a couple of classes. Performance item is just a very simple class that uses an object within here. But this is a standalone. These two classes are just standalone classes. You can drop them into your own projects, and that uses the some kernel level get frequency API, get time API, forms counter, get, I think, is it tick count or something like that, to get very, very high precision performance. And then it's got some functions to build out those reports. And then where I actually use that is when it's coming in some of the different places in the system. So let's see, this would be a good one, the SQL code formatter. So the performance category start is going to format SQL, then the operation start is going to start formatting. So it's just a very simple syntax that you can use to call different functions to start and stop timing throughout your code. And then you'll be able to, end timing and dump those results. You can dump into the debug window as well as writing up to a file. So it's just, I found it really helpful when I'm, debugging, even other applications that I'm writing. It's like, okay, where are things slowing down here? Let me just put some of those watches over the different, calls, and it'd give me the number of calls and how long they each took. So anyway, fun stuff you can do with timing on the performance side. And that, I think, was basically what I had for the
yeah. And as I said at the beginning, this was like 4 out of, I don't know, there are probably more than a dozen more things that were equally interesting and impressive about the tool. So I would encourage everybody to go to GitHub and start working it out, provide feedback to Adam. And I thank you again, Adam, for your time and your expertise. Do you have any other final thoughts you'd like to offer before we turn the recording off?
Yeah. Maybe I'll just touch just briefly on the, Microsoft's source control. I know this kind of a interesting thing, that they've been working on. I really look at that as being good news that they're actually interested in source control, looking to see something happen there. I like the idea that they're, exposing potentially APIs. Some of the things that we had to do were a little bit hackish, a little bit out of the box, non-conventional in order to get access to some of the components and things that we're using. So having more APIs would definitely be fantastic. And then official support for some of the, undocumented functions, unofficial functions are a great thing there. Some considerations that I think will be interesting just to see how things play out on their side. Obviously the timeline, seeing when things actually happen. And what they actually support in objects. For example, the sanitizing is something that's been refined pretty extensively in this particular add-in. I'm curious to see what they'll do on that side. If it's just taking the save as text and saving it to a source control that may have limited value compared to being able to fully sanitize things. But hey, if they could build that in, that would be great. Performance, I'll be curious to see how that lines up. We've been able to optimize some things. Is that going to make this particular add-in obsolete? Hey, that would be a good thing if it, did so much better that this was no longer needed. Personally, I kind of think it's going to stick around because this is something that's being community driven. So like Albert pointed out, there are use cases where where it's really helpful to have a tool like this that's going to be able to help us solve real world problems. And so I can see people, adding, merge requests and issues and stuff like that will continue to see this being developed as we go forward. I like it that it's also purpose built specifically for, fine tuned. It's great to have the, the built-in basic thing, but sometimes it's nice to have the purpose built tools, and it's very developer focused on what it does. So that's my 2 cents. But yeah, kind of excited to see how they do with it.
Once again, thank you very much, Adam. I'm sure this will be the impetus for a lot of new work. So we have a couple of comments in the chat and one question. So let's see. Kevin talked about using your add-in last summer. Kevin, do you want to follow up real quick?
Yeah, I was prototyping something in Access, and I decided to use the add-in. I was at Access Day and saw Mike Wolf's presentation, and at a previous company I worked for, we used a program called Oasis SVN, which works well. It's written by a guy out of Germany. He was very responsive when we found things like he wasn't dealing with like the shared images. So he put in a fix for that because we were kind of hacking through it. But it was very slow if you let it determine what objects had changed to the point. I mean, this was a massive kind of front end with thousands of objects. It was painful. And so we would just turn it off.
Yeah.
Whereas yours, again, my prototype, more complicated than Northwind by far, but nothing like Albert's or this application. But it worked great. Now, it was just me. I wasn't doing any polling. I was just pushing, just so I had, something to cover my backside if I did something silly. And then the one question I had was, is this English only?
Yeah, great question. So, I'm actually developing the the functionality, the framework, the ability to localize the user interface so that you could have it in German or in other languages. I know there's a huge German Access developer community, and again, it's not that we have to. All those developers, I'm sure, know English, and a lot of the documentation things are in English. But I think it just will make it even more comfortable for developers as they're using it and relying on it as an everyday tool. So that is in the works, and yeah, I look forward to seeing that. Yeah, hopefully this year, seeing that
That's
come out.
that's one of the things that Microsoft will do kind of by default is they will localize it. So that would be I guess the kind of the one advantage. But the good news is you could use both tools, right? I
Oh yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
it's all you really care about is generating the files for Git.
Hmm.
So, no, great job.
So, Crystal, you want to say your comment out loud? Crystal has just offered to be a conduit to the Access team for you if you have anything to share. Crystal, would you like to follow up on that?
Well, it actually stems from a comment that Jeff made, and that he really, really hopes that the Access team will make something really good. And in order for them to make something really good, it would be helpful if they had, Adam's ideas and other people's ideas. So I just thought that it would be good to get his ideas directly to them.
Hmm.
Yeah. So Crystal's a brand new, or not a brand new, restored MVP. She will make it a
18
point
years.
she'll make it a point to pass that on. And
Sure.
Ron, you offered a comment too, and if you'd rather, I mean, I would rather have you offer your comment directly rather than interpret it for you.
Is that George?
Yes. Ron, do you want to comment on your chat note here?
Yes, I just wanted to comment to export command bars. I was able to use the build before function call,
Hmm.
the export and the after.
Hmm.
The interesting thing is I exported it as a JSON file, and I used the JSON converter on the
Hmm.
add-on using that application run
Hmm.
capability. So I don't know if there's any things to worry about with that, but it seems to work good.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what you come up with the command bar export. I can remove that code then and use yours.
Mm.
But it's
Hmm.
functional. I mean, anything you want to build, any files you want to have it put out, you can use those functions to do the same thing.
Right. Yes.
And also, I've been impressed. I started off right with ran into an issue in a user discussion on the GitHub, and you came right back almost instantly. I was a little shocked.
Yeah.
So
Also,
yeah, I've been using about 3 or 4 months, and I've been very, very impressed with this software.
Oh,
great. So at
wonderful.
this point, I think I'll turn off the recording